You've meditated, you've journaled, you've whispered affirmations into the silence, trying to convince yourself that you've finally let go, and yet, nothing changes. The same patterns return, the same ache lingers beneath the surface. You wonder what more there is to do, or worse, if something is wrong with you for not feeling the peace everyone keeps talking about. But Carl Jung would ask a much deeper question, one that most people never consider. Which version of you is doing the letting go? Because if the one still secretly seeking validation, still carrying abandonment, still afraid of being unloved, is the one trying to surrender, then it's not surrender at all. It's self-abandonment, dressed in spiritual clothing. We've been taught to chase healing like it's a finish line. We try to earn peace through effort, perform our way into clarity, or mask our discomfort with rituals that look right but feel hollow. But stillness, real stillness, cannot be reached by bypassing the part of you that never felt safe to rest. And that's the truth no one wants to admit, especially in a world that rewards productivity, performance, and pretending you're okay when you're not. This isn't another video telling you to think positively or to sit quietly until life magically aligns. This is about the part of you that can't sit still, the part that flinches at silence because silence once meant danger, the part that wants to trust but still vibrates with a fear it cannot name. This is about the invisible wound keeps you moving, striving, fixing, hoping, and why doing nothing doesn't feel like freedom, but like a threat. You don't need to try harder, you need to go deeper. Because once you face the wound that keeps pulling the strings, stillness stops being an act of fear and starts becoming an act of power. And when that happens, life no longer needs to be forced. It begins to meet you exactly where you are. There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It doesn't break things or leave visible scars. It just lingers, quietly, patiently, beneath everything you do. You wake up and carry it to work. You smile with it at family dinners. You build relationships, careers, and identities around it, all the while unaware that it's still breathing beneath your surface, shaping how you feel, what you choose, and what you believe you deserve. This wound is not always easy to name. It doesn't announce itself in dramatic moments, but rather in subtle hesitations. In the way you shrink when someone gets too close, or in the way your stomach tenses when life offers you something good. It sounds like, "What if they leave?" or "I don't want to get my hopes up." It feels like walking through life with one foot always slightly off the ground, never fully landing, never fully trusting. This is the wound that says, "I'm not enough," even if you don't consciously hear it anymore. Most of us picked up this wound early, in childhood or adolescence. Maybe love was inconsistent. Maybe safety was conditional. Maybe your emotional needs were too much for the people around you, or maybe they were simply invisible. And so you learned to survive by becoming what others needed. Pleasing, achieving, caretaking, performing. You developed skills and roles and strengths, but they were all built on top of a silent ache that whispered, "If I stop, I'll be forgotten." You grew up, but the wound stayed, and even though your adult self may say, "I'm strong, I'm fine, I've moved on," your body never really believed it. Your nervous system, attuned to patterns of neglect or disconnection, learned to be on guard even in moments of peace. It flinches at love, it prepares for loss, it braces when life gets quiet. That is why no matter how much you affirm, how often you journal, or how loudly you say you trust, your energy says something else entirely. It says, "I'm still afraid." And the universe doesn't respond to your words, it responds to your frequency. It listens to the unsaid. It mirrors the safety your body feels, not the effort your mind exerts. So when nothing is shifting, it's not because you're broken or blocked. It's because the wound still lives underneath, shaping your vibration in silence. But here's the good news. This isn't a flaw. This is a call. The ache you feel isn't weakness. It's memory. And every memory can be re-met. Every buried belief can be brought into the light. The path forward isn't about bypassing your pain with performance. It's about honoring the part of you that needed protection when no one else noticed. Because once that part of you is seen, your energy begins to change. And when your energy changes, life does too. You say you want love. You long for peace, for a life that finally flows instead of fights. You visualize abundance, speak affirmations, and try to stay positive. But then something strange happens. Just as things begin to improve, you pull back. You doubt, you sabotage, you shrink. And you don't understand why. This is where most people believe they are blocked. But you are not blocked. You are protecting yourself. Not with logic, but with an ancient emotional reflex that says, it's not safe to receive what I desire. Somewhere within, a part of you remembers what it felt like to lose something you once trusted. A parent's sudden withdrawal, a betrayal wrapped in love. A dream that collapsed just as you reached for it. And so the wound made a quiet decision. If having it means risking losing it, maybe it's safer not to want it at all. This part of you isn't trying to ruin your life. It is trying to save it. It is loyal to your survival, not your goals. It's the unconscious guardian that learned long ago how to navigate heartbreak by preemptively closing the door before anything good can walk through it. And until you meet this part of you with compassion instead of shame, it will keep confusing fear with fate. This is not weakness. This is unprocessed grief. Grief that never had a safe place to land, so it curled up inside you and disguised itself as hesitation, distraction, or bad luck. But when you begin to name this inner contraction for what it truly is, something begins to loosen. The fear does not vanish, but it becomes visible. And anything you can see, you can hold with presence. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So many people believe they are stuck because of bad timing, karmic debt, or lack of effort. But in truth, they are being quietly steered by a part of them that is still bracing for loss. Still preparing for rejection, still whispering, "I don't know how to hold this without breaking." The path to healing is not about pushing through this fear. It is about sitting beside it, listening to the story it tells, and reminding it that you are no longer the helpless version of yourself who first experienced the wound. You are the adult now. You have the wisdom, the tools, and the presence to hold what once felt unholdable. You're not stuck. You're self-protecting. And once the part of you that learned to fear what it longs for begins to feel safe again, life no longer feels like a fight. It becomes a quiet permission to receive. You've heard the advice, surrender, let go, be still. But what if stillness does not feel like relief? What if silence doesn't soothe you, but terrifies you? For the wounded nervous system, stillness is not peace, it is a threat. It is the sound before the storm. The pause that used to mean pain was coming, and so, instead of relaxing into presence, your body tenses. Your mind races. You find reasons to move, fix, prove, or prepare. This is not self-sabotage, it is self-protection. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. If, in your past, quiet moments were followed by emotional withdrawal, rejection, or sudden chaos, your nervous system learned that safety lives in motion, not stillness. So now, when life gives you an open space to rest, your system interprets it as danger, not because it is unsafe now, but because it once was. This is how trauma encodes itself not just in your memory, but in your biology. Carl Jung taught that the unconscious is the true ruler of our lives. It does not respond to willpower or positive thinking. It responds to what is deeply felt and consistently believed. And if your body still believes that doing nothing will lead to pain, it will keep you busy, not in pursuit of joy, but in avoidance of threat. You may call it productivity. You may even call it ambition. But beneath the surface, it is vigilance. This is why you cannot meditate your way into peace, if your body equates quiet with abandonment. You cannot force stillness into a system that has learned to equate rest with risk. First, you must teach your nervous system that safety is no longer conditional, that rest no longer precedes rejection, that stillness is no longer the precursor to pain. Healing begins when the body feels what the mind has been telling it for years, that the threat is over, that you are not powerless anymore, that this silence is not the silence of being forgotten, but the silence of returning to yourself. Only then does stillness become soft again. Only then does doing nothing become nurturing rather than triggering. You cannot override the body with intellect. You must rewire it with gentleness, patience, and presence, because before you can surrender, you must feel safe in the silence. And once you do, you will realize that peace was never about escaping chaos. It was about feeling safe enough to no longer create it. There's a heaviness that settles in your chest when the world expects you to move, but every part of you feels frozen. It's easy to call it laziness. Others might label it a lack of ambition or discipline. But what if it's something deeper, quieter, and far more compassionate than failure? What if that stillness is not your downfall, but your body's wisdom trying to keep you safe? This is what we often miss when we try to force progress. We forget that stillness is not always a choice. Sometimes it is the echo of an old fear rising in the nervous system, whispering, "If you take that step, you'll be abandoned. If you try again, you'll be hurt. If you open up, you'll be rejected." And so we freeze, not because we are incapable, but because somewhere in our past, movement led to wounding, and the shadow remembers. The shadow is not evil. It is exiled pain. It is the younger version of you who once reached out and was ignored, who once spoke truth and was silenced, who once dared to love and was betrayed. That part of you does not care about growth goals or spiritual success. It only cares about one thing: survival. So when it senses that trying again might bring more pain, it quietly shuts you down. This is not weakness. It is intelligence born from trauma. Many people spend their lives punishing themselves for what is, in truth, a protective freeze. They push harder. They shame themselves for procrastinating. They drown in guilt for not being able to just do it. But the truth is, you cannot bully the shadow into safety. You must meet it, hear it, love it, until it no longer feels the need to hold you back. Progress does not come from force, it comes from integration. You must look beneath the behavior and ask, what part of me is afraid right now? What memory, what moment, what unhealed wound is driving this halt in motion? And then you must sit with it, not to fix it, but to acknowledge it, to let the younger you know that you are no longer alone in the dark. This time, someone is staying. Only then does the freeze begin to thaw. Only then can energy return without being hijacked by fear. When your shadow is seen, it no longer needs to scream through paralysis. It softens. And in that softening, motivation returns, not as pressure, but as peace. Not as urgency, but as readiness. You were never lazy. You were protecting something sacred. And now that you see it, you can finally move forward from a place of safety instead of survival. There is a moment in every healing journey when something subtle, yet monumental, begins to shift. It doesn't come with fanfare. It doesn't happen when you've done everything right. It happens when you finally stop trying to fix yourself and instead dare to witness what's been crying out beneath the surface. Not to analyze it, not to shame it, but to simply say, I see you, and I'm not going anywhere. Most of us were taught to escape our pain, to outgrow it, to outperform it. But wounds do not disappear just because we bury them under success or spirituality. They remain alive in the body, waiting to be acknowledged, waiting to be seen without judgment. Because what the wound fears most is not pain, but being forgotten. And what it craves is presence. Healing begins not when you become perfect, but when you become present. When you stop seeing your sadness as weakness and your fear as failure. When you stop needing to be above your pain and instead choose to sit beside it, as you would with a hurting child. You don't tell the child to be quiet or get over it. You hold them, you listen, and in that tenderness, the energy that once felt like chaos begins to calm. This is what it means to witness. It is not passive, it is profoundly active, even if it looks like stillness. When the wound inside you is finally held in compassion, something incredible happens. Your vibration realigns. The internal war between what you want and what you believe you deserve begins to end. And without effort, your life starts to respond to that harmony. You stop chasing validation. You stop pushing for outcomes. You stop trying to manifest from a place of desperation. Instead, life begins to flow toward you, not because you manipulated it, but because your inner world no longer sends mixed signals. Your energy becomes congruent. You ask for love, and you finally believe you're worthy of receiving it. You ask for peace, and you stop preparing for betrayal. You ask for abundance, and no longer fear it will be taken away. This is the shift point. Not the moment you became someone new, but the moment you returned to the part of you that always existed underneath the armor. The moment you stopped abandoning yourself and met your wound with reverence. It is not a final destination, but a sacred turning, the beginning of a relationship with your truth that no longer needs to be proven or performed. And when that alignment takes root in your nervous system, the external world starts to feel less like a battle and more like an invitation. Not because everything outside changed, but because you did. You finally became the version of yourself who can receive what you once feared. We often talk about surrender as something to achieve, a goal to reach. But true surrender is not a tactic. It is not a strategy to attract what you want. It is the residue of something deeper, clarity. And clarity cannot bloom while the nervous system is still scanning for danger. It cannot emerge from a mind that is still negotiating with fear. You may think you've let go, but ask yourself gently, did you release or did you retreat? Did you surrender from grounded knowing or collapse from exhaustion? These are not the same. One is liberation, the other is self-abandonment, wearing a spiritual mask. True surrender arises when the self within you becomes whole enough to stop performing. It is what happens when the inner child no longer needs to scream for proof of safety, because the adult within has finally answered. It is not passive. It is not a defeat. It is the deep stillness that comes when you no longer have to wrestle with life to be seen. You begin to feel safe in your own body. You stop scanning the horizon for what might go wrong. You stop chasing love as if it is something outside of you, because now it lives within. You have faced the wound. You have sat in its fire. You have seen yourself in your most fragile state, and you did not run. And so, surrender happens, not as something you do, but as something that gently unfolds. You are no longer trying to manipulate timing, outcomes, or people. You are no longer making peace a transaction. You are no longer praying with one hand open and the other clenched in fear. This is what Jung meant when he described the importance of inner integration. Only when the shadow is acknowledged and the split parts of the psyche are reunited can you act from your center rather than your wounds. When that reunion takes place, surrender is not forced. It becomes the natural posture of your being. You stop letting go to prove that you're enlightened or evolved. You stop letting go to manifest something faster. You stop letting go to please some higher ideal of who you should be. You let go because there is nothing left to grip. You let go because you have remembered who you are, and that remembering is strong enough to hold you. And from that place, stillness is no longer dangerous. It becomes sacred. Silence no longer feels like abandonment. It becomes a sanctuary. Doing nothing is no longer a freeze response. It becomes the most powerful signal you can send to the universe. I trust. I am ready. I am home. At some point, you were told that the key to healing was letting go. If you just stopped thinking about it, released the pain, and visualized the life you wanted hard enough, everything would finally fall into place. So you meditated, you journaled, you practiced detachment. But deep down, something still didn't shift, and it left you wondering, why does nothing change, even when I try to surrender? Carl Jung once said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Not just the curated parts, not the polished ones that seek validation, but the hidden parts. The raw, unspoken pain, the wounded voice inside you that was never allowed to speak. And perhaps that is where the real healing begins, not in learning how to let go, but in learning how to sit with the part of you that still clings. This journey has never been about doing more. It has been about remembering what you once silenced. The wound you carry is not your flaw. It is your compass. It has been guiding you, again and again, to the moment where you stop performing and start witnessing, where you stop trying to transcend your pain and begin to listen to it. This wound is not a curse. It is a doorway. And every time you avoided it, pushed past it, or tried to force peace without understanding the chaos within, life mirrored that dissonance. But when you finally turn toward it, with presence instead of shame, something powerful happens. You soften. You align. You stop reaching for things to prove you are worthy and stop becoming the version of yourself who already is. And from that place, stillness is no longer a void, it becomes a sanctuary. A space where your nervous system relaxes because there is nothing left to hide, no mask to hold, no version of yourself to perform. This is the paradox. Doing nothing becomes powerful only when it rises from a place of wholeness. You are no longer detaching to avoid pain, but resting in the truth that you have already faced it. You are no longer silent out of fear, but grounded in clarity. And when your inner world no longer whispers, I am not safe, your outer world no longer needs to scream for attention. You do not need to let go faster. You need to become safe enough for the part of you that still holds on. Because when that part is finally seen, stillness becomes magnetic, and doing nothing becomes the most powerful thing you can do. If this message stirred something inside you, don't stop here. The next video will take you even deeper into the journey of healing, growth, and self-discovery. It might just be the breakthrough your soul has been waiting for. Tap into it now. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and join a community committed to truth, transformation, and real inner change. You're not alone on this path. I'll meet you in the next video, where we continue becoming who we were always meant to be.